Okay, so now we know that we can successfully log in with Facebook, but of course we've got some loose ends to tie up. We need a loading indicator, we need to redirect them to the activities page, and what we'll also start to do is we'll start to see some complaints from Facebook if we do not check to see if they're already connected to Facebook outside of our app before attempting to use the FB login function to log them in. It'll make a complaint about trying to create a new access token when we've got one that we can use already, that kind of thing. So what we'll do is we'll go back to VS Code, and what we should be doing, actually thinking about it, is we should be working on a separate branch. We don't want to touch our main branch. So I'm just going to cd up to the reactivities level. And what we'll do is we'll say git checkout, and we'll say -b for a new branch, and we'll say FB login, and press return. And now we're on the FB login branch, and when we commit our changes, they'll be committed to this branch. And since we've got automatic deploy on our main branch, it's a good idea to do this before you start writing the codes, just so you don't forget. But anyway, we've done it now, and what we're going to do is tidy things up so that we present an acceptable login experience when they use Facebook login. So inside our user store, we'll add a couple of properties inside here, and we'll add FB access token, and we'll say this is a type of string, or it's going to be null, and we'll give it an initial value of null. And we'll also just say FB loading and set this equal to false so that we can add a loading indicator to our button. Now what we're going to do is we're going to set this access token when our application starts up. So we're going to go to our app.tsx, and what we want to do in here is if we've got a token in local storage, we're just going to use that and sign them in as we normally would. But if they are logged out, then we're going to check their Facebook login status and see if we can use the token we get back from that. So what we can do is we'll need to go back to our user store first, and we'll add a new method in here just above the Facebook login, and we'll say get Facebook login status, and what we'll do is we'll say window.fb.getLoginStatus, and we'll get the response, and we'll say if response.status equals connected, then what we'll do, we'll say this.fb access token equals response.authResponse.access token. So we'll set this inside our store. And what we'll also do, even though we can't use async on this, just so that we make sure we return a promise from this, what we'll do is we'll just make this async, and then when we do return from this method, it's automatically going to return a promise, even though we're not directly going to return anything from it. And then we can go to our app.tsx, and what we'll do, if we do not have their token, then inside the else, what we'll do is we'll say user store.get Facebook login status, and then we'll say len, and inside the len we'll say common store set app loaded. And then we can head back to our user store and finish things off in there. So we'll go back to our Facebook login method, and what we'll do is we'll say list.fb loading equals true, and then what we'll do, we'll just add a helper function inside this. So we'll say const API login equals, and we'll pass this an access token which is of type string, and we need to make this an arrow function so that we can get access to what's inside our class. And then what we'll do, we'll say agent.accounts.fb login, and we'll pass the access token, and then we'll say len, and we'll take our user object, and what we'll do, we'll say store.commonStore.set token, and we'll get the user.token, and then we'll say run in action, and we'll say list.user equals user, and list.fb loading equals false. And then after this, run in action, we'll say history.push, and we'll pass them to the activities. And what we'll also do is need to catch the error. So we'll say error as the parameter, and we'll log any error to the console, and then we'll use a running action, and we'll just turn off the loading flag, and we'll say this.fb loading equals false. So below this method then, this is just a helper method. We still need to actually use more functionality or more logic, and we'll check to see if we have list.fb access token. And if we do, then we'll just say API login and pass in this.fb access token. And if we do not have an access token, then what we'll do is we'll use the window.fb.login, and we'll get the response, and then we'll say API login, and we'll say response.authResponse.access token. And we can remove the code that we had down here, but we still need the scope of what we're looking for. So we'll just add this in afterwards, and then we can remove this code. And we should be good to test, I think. But we'll soon find out. So let's go back to our browser and refresh the page. And we're always going to get this kind of warning. We're running on HTTP, but it doesn't affect the functionality. It's just a nasty warning in our console, and obviously when we publish this, we're not going to see this warning. So let's go take a look. Let's click the button, log in with Facebook, and okay, we get taken to our page, but I forgot to add the loading flag, so let's just log out again, and we'll go back to the home page, and we'll add a loading indicator, and we'll say loading equals, and we'll say user store and FB loading. And let's give that another go. So we'll head back, I'll just refresh the page, make sure the change gets picked up. And we'll click login with Facebook, see the loading indicator, taken to the activities, logged in as Barbara Test, and everything looks good. We aren't going to see these warnings though in our console. No avoiding that because we're using HTTP. But what we can do now is take a look at republishing our app and deploying it to Heroku, which is on HTTPS, and we'll take a look at that next.